is your host, Benjamin Saxton, and welcome to a Fighter's Chance podcast, where we give people in the combat sports world an opportunity to talk about the things worth fighting for. Today's guest has a record of 59-5-1, a true legend to the sport. 11-time Muay Thai world champion, was a WMC Muay Thai cruiserweight world champion, 2007 K1 Scandinavian tournament champion, former World Kickboxing Network heavyweight Muay Thai champion, author at Fight Mag, Carnage Diary, commentator for Lion Fight, just recently inducted into the WBC Muay Thai Hall of Fame. Nathan Carnage Corbett, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well after that intro because it's funny, when you're doing things or you've done things, you don't kind of like really sort of focus on all the things you've achieved. So when you're reading it off, I'm like, oh yeah, that was good. That was good.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm feeling, how am I doing? I'm feeling really good right now after that. So thanks.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, your career, anybody that knows Muay Thai, anybody that follows it, knows your name. You cemented yourself as one of the legends in the sport. It's a truly pleasure talking with you today. And I think this conversation is going to be awesome because I think your experience and your ability to achieve at a very high level, I think will give some great insight into this. So today, I really want to start out by talking about your early experiences. You started with karate, moving into martial arts, and then getting to Muay Thai. But obviously, you had to start somewhere, right, and build those development building blocks to get to that professional level and to compete at a very high level. So maybe we could just start out by what attracted you to the sport, and then who you were kind of training with to kind of elevate your skill level.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, every story has a beginning, and I've shared it a few times, but it's a very similar story, but I'll share it differently each time. Without going into the reasons why I started, but how I got into Muay Thai was I was already training karate. And then when I was 16, I was lucky enough, my next door neighbor knew my Muay Thai coach, who wasn't my Muay Thai coach at the time, but become my first coach. He's like, oh, you've got to do Muay Thai. I'm like, oh, okay, let me have a look at that. And obviously, when you go from karate, which is awesome, but then you look at the brutality and the competition level of Thai boxing, with all the leg kicks and
right,
brutality and the elbows and stuff like that. And so I was okay, fascinated with that. So of course, naturally, I met this guy, which was Greg Whitehouse, who was my first coach, and he was a Jeet Kune Do practitioner, as well as Kali sticks, as well as Muay Thai. So he wasn't like some famous just Muay Thai legend coach or anything. He was a martial artist. And it was perfect. So he was my first Muay Thai coach. So at 16, I went into that. But I stayed with karate till I was 20. I stayed with karate for 4 more years, but I was training the kickboxing Muay Thai on the side. It wasn't until the end of 1999, after I got back from America, where I competed in some karate American national title tournament, got back and was like, I think it's time for me to move into a new career of kickboxing Muay Thai. So I knew of Shannon Forrester, which was the F-16 bomber. Some people might not know who he is, but if anyone looks up, some of the best Australian Muay Thai fighters ever, Shannon Forrester, F-16 bomber, was one of them. He was fighting at 63 kilograms, but I went to school with him. He was a few years older than me, but I remember him from school. So when I was seeking for a gym, which was Boonchu Gym, it was because of Shannon. It wasn't actually John Wayne Park at the time. It was because of Shannon that I went there. And obviously Wayne had just got back from Thailand and they started this gym. And then I just sort of was at the beginning of that whole process in 2000, January. It kind of was not at the end of 99, they kind of started. And then I was lucky enough to be at the beginning of that process of where Wayne left Thailand to come back and stayed in Australia. So that was the beginning years of I left my first teacher because, he didn't really have the platform to take me to the next level. And then now all of a sudden I'm immersed in a gym full of champions. And obviously, as everyone knows, John Wayne Parr was a legend. He was already at that time, an amazing fighter, accomplished all these titles and wins in Thailand. And there was just a gym full of champions. Paul Hurricane Briggs, he come there, and at the end of '99, and on New Year's Eve, he went and fought after retiring for a few years, he went and fought a kickboxing Muay Thai fight in Japan. Come back, spoke to a boxing promoter, decided to hang up the legs, let's say, the legs, and went to straight boxing. So he did his first, I think he did almost his first year boxing out of that gym, and then he moved on to another gym. So it was just a great sort of time.
How was it when you're in the gym with all of those those champion fighters, right? And for some that can be intimidating, some that can be a challenge, and sometimes I'm sure you experience getting your ass kicked there and delivering it too while you're developing. How was that with the skill set being so high all the way around you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was never intimidating because I guess it was something that I was wanting. So I wasn't so much intimidated. I was, obviously in awe of these fighters and where they were at, where I was at, because I'd stepped in there and I'd had 3 sort of amateur kickboxing fights because, there was no elbows as an amateur. I had 3 amateur kickboxing fights, like one when I was 16, 17, 18, just one a year in between karate. So I kind of went in there and I was, beginning again of my career. So obviously Wayne, I don't know how many fights he'd had back in 2000. Maybe he had, 30 or 40 fights by then. I'm not sure. Obviously Paul Briggs was someone I looked up to because I mimicked a lot of his style of fighting. I loved that aggressive, powerful. Plus he was he went from super middleweight to cruiserweight. So it was more around my weight class, more of a striker than a game player. So I mimicked a lot of his style. I was kind of like in awe of being around them. So it was fantastic. And many times in the early days, I would get, even if I was a slightly bit bigger than Wayne at that time, he'd still could beat me up because he was way more experienced. So I got my lickings, as they say, early in the days. Paul Briggs, broke my nose in sparring once because I hit him with a good shot, and he just went, "Not really." He's come back and smashed me, and because a lot of people will say that I spar too hard, and I sparred too hard or I was too aggressive, but I certainly, no one ever knows the other side as I was coming up that, I obviously got a couple of beatings here and there. Never too bad, but, I never beat people up that bad either myself. So
it's funny you say that with sparring too hard, because I've talked with other legends, whether it's Muay Thai or, kickboxing here in the States. Rob Zablisky, Hall of Fame promoter and trainer in the kickboxing side. And he had similar stories where, he just trained with a different intensity, right? You sometimes there's certain level of fighters where you just train, your skill set's really good and you just train at a higher intensity, and sometimes that can throw people off.
Exactly. And as for those who know my fight style, it's very intense. I have a really intense style. That's why my name was Carnage. And,
I know.
So then I had I have an intense personality. Like I'm relaxed as a person, but I'm very intense when I'm serious about what I'm doing. And so when I'm training hard. When I'm fighting, I'm fighting extremely hard. My whole objective to fighting was to win and stop my opponent. I never thought about a point system or how many kicks have I landed this round. I was like, okay, the bell went ding, and I'm just going to try and knock them out in 3 minutes. If I don't make it, I've got another 3 minutes ahead of me, and if I don't make it, I've got another 3 minutes. And I've got 5 3-minute chances of doing that, And out of 64 fights and 60 wins, because the one loss that you're talking about was a disqualification, but the guy was knocked out, so I put it as a win. Accidental knockout, but it was. So in 42 knockouts, from the 60 wins. So it was more like that was my intention, I guess, which is always what I felt like separated me from a lot of different fighters, was the intention. And but going back to what you're saying, like the intensity in sparring. So now, and I'm 40 now, and now as I mature, I look back, I go, I wouldn't change what I did. I would never have changed what I did. Like I wouldn't say, I should have sparred less hard, or I should have done this. I would never change anything. But what I can definitely understand now is if you're fighting kickboxing, just straight kickboxing, you better be sparring hard. Because everyone else in that game because it's a very much a glove cover, like punch, bug, come back kind of style, shield up, come back kind of style, where Thai boxing, you don't necessarily need to spar as hard because it's more dimensional things. Like they're covering up, with me, I could slip through an elbow, pull the guard down, slice them, you can use a lot more kind of different things with the clinch. You don't necessarily need to be clashing and smashing and boxing as much in a Thai boxing game. So I feel like if I was to give people advice on sparring hard versus not sparring hard, I think if you're going to fight kickboxing, you better spar hard. If you're going to fight Thai boxing, you don't necessarily need to. But sometimes it's good because if you're not fighting more than 3 times a year, how are you getting that reality?
Right.
You know, so I
go
feel
ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
So if you've trained and been around some of the great fighters and been around the world, experienced different training methods, let's just say recovery methods. I got to imagine some of it is, changed. Sports has changed since 30 years ago to now, how people recover, how people train. If you could look back on it and say, maybe there was a different way you could have recovered, maybe when you first started to now, would you have done it differently from a recovery standpoint, or just of what we know now?
Oh, absolutely. Like if I was to, be an athlete now, like it would be so different. Like, so let me just go back to when I was fighting, and how it was in Australia. I don't know what America was like, but Australia was probably, other than obviously Thailand being the leading country, and then Holland with Raymond Decker and that kind of, era of Muay Thai fighters. But Australia was probably one of the leading countries in the world. It was like phenomenal in Muay Thai and so many champions for a long period of time. So I had no recovery. I had no diet. Like when I say no diet, like, okay, I understood that I needed protein if I wanted to build muscle, because I was always wanting to go up in weight divisions. My whole career, I was always trying to put on weight and go bigger because I just like to be powerful. So I knew I needed to eat protein. But from what I know now, not that I eat that way now, but from what I know, being around like, bodybuilders or, or training Aaron Pico for Bellator, and he's like got all this nutrition things going on. He's training with Coach Cal, and they scientifically, the heart rate monitors. From what I've experienced now, and from the UFC, the Bellator level of, like, say, discipline or commitment to diet, to what I was doing, it's like I knew nothing. I had no ice baths, I had no recovery, I had no hydration, I had no heart rate, I had no supplements other than just going, protein powder, throw it in, aminos, throw it in, glutamine, throw it in. Yeah, you think you're resting, you're hungry, you eat something more. You wake up in the morning, you're just eating, and when you got to cut weight, you're just like, okay, I can't eat bread, I can't eat pizza. I better not have any sugar. Like, that was really it. It wasn't like a scientific formula. Like, you'd go to training, you just destroy yourself on the bag and just, all the pads, bag, whatever, and then just go home, and there's no aftercare. There was no real second thought. There was no this, no that. So I feel like these days, like, a lot of people are either different. They're completely different athletes now, in the sense that they've become an athlete versus, like, and not to say they're not a warrior, because they're all warriors, but from like a warrior fighter versus athlete, it's like this totally different thing. I feel like now with the UFC at the top, it's kind of morphed into both. Like, they're definitely warriors because it's like such a badass sport. But there's that athlete kind of morphed together.
Right.
Where before it was just like, if you look at Thai boxing in Thailand, like, they didn't even have enough food. So it was just train hard, eat some rice, have some fish, some chicken, go to bed, wake up, do it again. So it wasn't like they really knew much about nutrition other than what they could get on their plates. So
that's fascinating.
So then when you think about it that way, that only leaves one topic to talk about. The topic, which is mindset. So then all of a sudden, what made me win 10 years of undefeated as a world champion and 11 different belts, 3 different weight divisions? How did I do that if I didn't have recovery, if I didn't have the right supplements, the right nutrition, the right this, the right scientists, the right heart rates, the right all these things? It really just comes from the pure passion and will to win within. But however, I burnt out in 2014. I woke up one day, my nervous system just said, no, I'm done. And I haven't recovered in 6 years. No rest, no sleep can recover that.
Right. I mean, you're going full throttle for so many
I
years.
just thrashed the engine, thrashed the nervous system, cooked my engine so bad, which haven't spoke about publicly much. But the point is that it doesn't recover to the point where I could go back and be like a top tier athlete again, because the nervous system is dead. So maybe because if I had all that nutrition, then that would have been different. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think it's safe to say, I mean, you were able to accomplish so much without any of that, like sport, let's just call it sports science, right? The nutrition, that training side of it, and you were able to accomplish so much. So if you were able to add in that piece of it, maybe you're a little bit further longevity, or maybe your level is even elevated even further. So maybe we're not talking 11, maybe we're talking 15, maybe we're talking, who knows? But that doesn't stop the fact that you were outstanding fighter, super accomplished in what you did and what you achieved. No, I think that's willpower, mindset is a major testament. And I want to talk about, these tournaments, when we start talking about like world Muay Thai champions, like you have quite a bit of fights in there, right? You're carrying injuries. There's one fight after another. Maybe not injuries, but you're not 100% after the first one, especially if you're getting to a gold medal or a championship round. Maybe you could talk about one of the hardest tournaments that you've ever been in, whether you won it or not, something that you've experienced and some of the adversity that you had to face in those type of tournaments.
Yeah. I had, in my fight career, I actually went in 3 8-man tournaments. So that's where you have the 3 fights on one night. And I'll briefly talk about the first. The second one is the one I'll go more into details with what you asked. And the third one I can just talk about how I had it, which was pretty awesome as well. So the first one briefly is I went to the gym on a Saturday morning to spar, and I was at Boonshoe back then because it was in 2001. And I just had my I just won my 7th fight, which was my first Australian professional Muay Thai title. I went to gym to spar, and Wayne says, if you want to fight tonight, don't put your shin pads on, because they need someone to go into this tournament. They need someone to fill in this tournament in Brisbane, which is an hour drive from where I am. And it was in the Valley Gymcast Promotions. And it was at 82 kilograms, and I was 79 kilos. So it was 3 kilos up in weight, which is not a lot, but a little bit. And I walked around at fight weight back then, and I said, okay, I'll do it. So then that night, I'm up in the car driving to Brisbane. I'm now in this tournament. So the first fight, I ended up knocking the guy out. Second fight, I knocked the guy out. So it was still hard fights. And the third fight was actually against Paul Sawinski, who then became like WMC heavyweight world champion. He was a big guy, even though he was 82. He was coming down from 80 back. So he was a lot bigger than me. We went 3 rounds. I lost on points because I was just exhausted from 3. And I never even remembered that fight. There was no tape, but I can't remember got the tape. I haven't even seen the footage. But I never felt like I lost, because I was like, I went 3 rounds, with the distance. I didn't get stopped. I was just exhausted. I couldn't do what it took to win that fight. So that was my first loss in my career, because believe it or not, I went on a 30 fight win streak from there before I actually lost the game, which was in 2006. But that's a different story. However, moving forward to my actual second 8-man tournament, which was, I knew I was going to fight. It was training camp for it. I was in 2007. I couldn't get a fight for like 6 months. And my friend who was looking after me with my gloves and sponsors knew someone in Sweden, in Stockholm. So he said, we can get you into this 8-man tournament. It's a 91 kilogram. And I was fighting 86 kilos. It was a 91 kilogram. Because I don't know the pound conversion.
Okay.
91 kilogram, 8-man tournament. So I was like, okay, bang, no K1 rules, of course. So I was like, okay, let's go. So we flew to Sweden, and the first guy I had to fight was a world champion, and we were in the fight. Now, I hadn't fought for 6 months, and, so I was still fit and I was training hard, but I hadn't been in the ring. So I'll get in the fight, and when I fought in the fight, I just felt terrible. Like I just lost I lost like that momentum that I had the previous year. And I felt like it was so foreign to me. Like being in there was foreign. I just didn't feel like I had that same like Carnage spirit anymore. It was almost like something had left me. Like something had switched off. Like it was
Okay.
off. But I won the fight.
Okay.
And then I went back out to the change room. And this is the part that was such a powerful part of the story. So then I went back to the change room and I was like in my own mind going like, I've now got to go back out and fight again, but yet I feel like I don't have the fighter in me anymore. But now I'm still in Stockholm. There's 15,000 people there. I can't tell my trainer, hey, you know, I'm not feeling, I'm going to quit. So I was in that moment where I was like, okay, I have to find whatever it is inside me to turn it back on because I'm going back out.
Right.
And I'm fighting against another guy who was like another world champion. From I think Afghanistan or something like that, some big Russian tough guy. So then I had to like G myself up and go, okay, I'm going back out there no matter what. And so I went back out to the second fight, and it just clicked. Like boom! All of a sudden must have been some dust that just needed to be dusted off. I already had the fight, you know what I mean? And the second fight was amazing. I just fought like one of my most technical, perfect fights I fought, you know, with no elbows, you know, to date at that time in my career. So I was just like, wow, it's amazing. So now I'm in the final, and I thought, well, I've got this far, I got like a little mouse on my eye, you know, I got busted shins, I got like my anklet pulled up my shin, you know, you're a little bit busted up after, because these guys are big, like they're 95 kilogram, which is like, you know, 210 pound kind of guys, big guys. So then I get to the final, and it was against Ashwin Borwak, which was this Dutch guy, famous in Holland, you know, trained with Gökhan Saki. All those guys are pretty kind of, and a very awkward kind of southpaw style guy. But when he was walking down the runway and I was looking at him and he was looking at me, like, you know, he's going to slow doing the whole neck thing on Achille and that. I was just like, come down here, because I was at that point where I was like, I went through so much adversity throughout the tournament, throughout the night mentally, you know, that I got to the point where I was now in the finals. Like, there is no way that I'm going to lose.
Right.
Like, I could not go through that first fight to feel terrible, to be back in the change room, to be in my own mind, my own darkness, that can't talk to anyone about this, to then have to take myself out on the runway because I had no choice. But to then, which was kind of a savior, because if that was just one fight, then I had to go back home and then think about it for 3 months before the next fight. I don't know what would have happened, you know. I probably wouldn't have quit, because I've had that feeling after that in 2011. I had that same feeling come back once. But then obviously I had no choice but to just face it straight away, like face adversity right now. Like when your fear's there, and doubt's there, you just got to go boom, walk straight into it. So I did that one. That's in this, and then now we're in the final. So there's no way I'm going home. Like, I just got this far. There's no way I can lose. So then I ended up winning the tournament. I won that fight, and you know, got the belt and the confetti and all the championship stuff. So that was just an amazing story that, you know, I will get the opportunity one day to use that story and break it down to so many life lessons for when I do public speaking, because it's got so much depth to it. Like, you know, the preparation to get ready for it, and obviously going through adversity, and then overcoming fears and doubts, and then, you know, deciding that you will not walk away as a loser and then becoming victorious. There's a lot of great metaphors.
Oh, absolutely. Did you ever tell your coach afterwards? You're like, hey, you don't know this, but after that first round, it was a little dicey. I know I won, but
I know, it's crazy. And then if I go back and watch the footage, it didn't look like I was rusty. It just was like, I just didn't feel I had something in me that was just like, come on, fucking there, like, you know, like just like more possessed, you know, kind of feeling. So that was just an amazing feeling, you know. That was 2007, it was a long time ago. It was amazing. And then anyway, so then 2009, I fought Spong, come back, won another fight. Then I had to get 2 surgeries. I had some shoulder surgery, I had some hip arthroscopies done on my my hips, on both hips. And then I had 10 months, you know, out of the ring to recover. And then there was a promoter in Melbourne called Tarek Solak, one of the biggest promoters in Melbourne for K1 tournaments. He brought all the big names out. And it was called the A1. And it was like, okay, it's 105 kilogram cutoff. And I was fighting at that time at 90 kilos. So it was 105 cutoff, but I was probably walking around about 95. So it was 105 cutoff. So you couldn't have too big, but not too small. and it was an 8-man tournament, and it was my first fight back after 10 months of surgery. So I went in it, and I was like, and all my worst sort of fears appeared in the tournament. It was all Australians, but it was like, I can't lose to this guy. I cannot lose to this guy because it'll mean everything I've ever done, because he's up and coming kind of like guys. And there was Steve McKinnon was in there, and we might have had to rematch after I beat him in 2006. And then obviously, like this up and coming guy that was like sort of biting at my ankles, and then I was like, I can't lose to him, otherwise everything else. And then Paul Sawinski was in there, might have got a chance to rematch him, from that first loss. There was so many, variety of like things that were coming at me. So anyway, so I went in the tournament and trained well for it, and I won the first fight. And the second fight was exactly that. It was that one person that was at my ankles. It was from Boonshoe Gym, which was John Wayne's gym. And like back in 2003, John Wayne kicked me out of his gym. So there was always like that, there was like, that sort of rivalry. And even though we ended up making up and getting along, but there was still just like, he would love his boy to beat me,
Oh yeah, of course. You got that competition.
Yeah, guaranteed. So I was like, there's no way I'm losing to this guy. And this guy was one of those athletes, he could have played any sport. So he's just a fit dude, and he was talented. Anyway, so I fought him and I beat him, because I was just like, there's no way I'm losing this fight.
Like, you're an athlete. I'm still going to take you out.
He was a fighter too, but he was very genetically gifted. So he had both, I looked genetically gifted, but I actually struggled a lot with my athleticism. Anyway, so then in the final, I had the opportunity to maybe fight Steve or maybe fight Paul Sawinski, because they were fighting in the semis. And it was such a hard fight that Steve McKinnon actually won the fight. So I thought, okay, bang, let's go. It's on. And I said to the promoter, if we get to the final, let's fight with elbows, because in a tournament you can't do elbows, because you cut. I said, and he said to everyone, if everyone's okay when you get to the finals, it's elbows. I said, yeah, of course, I want elbows. So then we got to the final. I thought, okay, boom, it's Steve McKinnon. This is it. We're doing it. Anyway, so then he ended up pulling out of the fight because he felt concussed from the fight with Sawinski. So then Sawinski got the opportunity. He was the next one up, and he said, I'm too tired. I'm too exhausted. So he pulled out. So I didn't get to face any of them. So then one of the guys who lost in his first round, who was this really good, powerful Samoan guy who I used to spar with many years ago, he said, I'll take it, because he's just a warrior, a big dude. And I knew how to beat him, because even though he's bigger than me, I knew how to beat him because I'd sparred him lots. But so I ended up fighting him with elbows and sliced him up and cut him to pieces. And he's a good man. He passed away, so bless him. But so it was one of those, another time. So then I become victorious again. So then I stood again with the belt and I was the winner. So there's so much psychology and there's so many like things behind it. So even when we circle back to the first part about diet and career, could I have done more with a diet? I don't think I could have done more with a diet. I don't think I could have performed any better with a diet, but I might have lasted longer. I might have had another 2-3 years. Because when I finished at 34 and a half and 35, I turned 35 and I was like, I'm trying to get back. But at 35, I realized I couldn't. And then you got Wayne Parr, who's fighting at 42, 43 years of age still. So that's another 8 years he got out of his body that I never got. So sometimes that pisses me off. So pretty much at 35, I was done. So maybe could have gone to 37, 38 if I'd done all those other things. But I don't think it would have changed who I was and what I did, because what I did had nothing to do with food. It had everything to do with, training the drills and making it work and going and doing all the technical stuff. It had to do with this,
Yeah, I mean, I'm a believer. Anybody that hears this podcast will hear me say this over and over again, but I'm a believer everything happens for a reason. So whether your time was to stop then or later, I truly believe for whatever reason that's meant to be. Your stories over and over again, you can just tell the mindset. Like you have to mentally be in it. You have to have that spirit like on fire to be going through these tournaments as you face adversity and as you face new challenges, and you have people coming right at your heels wanting to take that spot away from you, right? So you're trying to not just prove that you're the person to beat, but that they're not on you. You know, you're
They're
still
not
on
on my
another level.
level. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because you got to
So,
remember this: when someone's coming to fight you, I never looked at it. If I fought this guy and lost tonight, there was just I lost tonight. You know, it was every soul I took before him, he collects in one swoop.
okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
It means every belt, every fighter, every cut, every KO that I did before that person, he comes in, he beats me, he takes that in one swoop. He didn't have to go through 50 of them. He just went, just like a kingdom, just like a king in the days. Doesn't matter how many fights that guy's had, how many wars he's gone in, and how many villages he's had to go and kill to become like the kingdom of this land. This one king can just come in and just go and take everything from him.
That's an interesting mentality, because
that's my mentality.
Yeah.
That's Carnage. That's Nathan Corbett. That's what I don't know what I'd like to say. It separates me from anyone, but that's what separated me from making those decisions and being the fighter that I was.
Well, and just that mentality to be like, to say that all of your other accomplishments were going to go away, right? You were just not going to allow that to happen. Yeah.
Because in 2006, I fought Steve McKinnon, the Smashing Machine, again at a catch weight at 92 kilograms. I was 86. There's a lot of repeating things that go here. Now, 2006, I went up to 92 kilos. I was fighting 86. Right? That's like 10, 15 pounds. I went up that weight just because everyone wanted us to fight, and he was the best in Australia, and I was the best in Australia, so we fought 2006 and I won. Right? 2012, we're meted to fight again. It was at 95 kilos, and back in 2012, I was fighting 95 kilos, so now all of a sudden it was the same weight. Even though he's a big guy, it was the same weight. So 2012, 2006, you got 6 years. Now, 2006, I beat him. And all of a sudden now in 2012, you know, I've won 10 world titles, and I've even knocked out Tyrone Spong, and, you know, all these things. So now I'm faced with him again. And I'm like, there is no way, because he's an Australian, I'm going to just hand over the crown, the kingdom of Australia, to him. Right. You know what I mean? It was way deeper than, I lost to him, it's won, all that bullshit. So even though I lost to Tyrone Spong in 2013, I did knock him out in 2009. I lost him in 2013. It sucked. It hurt. It was shit. But it was a different acceptance after that fight than what I just spoke about with all these other situations. Stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
No, once again, it's such an interesting concept, because what you're essentially doing, you're making every fight, I mean, on a personal level to you, right? You know, it doesn't have to be bad blood or anything against you, but it's personally to you. Like, you have that personal attachment, regardless of who's ever standing in front of you. You have that personal attachment in the fight.
Yeah.
I want to transition. So anybody that's listening that hasn't heard it yet, you have your own YouTube channel, Carnage Philosophy. You talk about mindset. You talk about making your own luck. A lot of really interesting things, and it just kind of talking about being, you know, really centering yourself, doing the right things. Maybe you could speak a little bit about some of the things that you've posted on that, because it's definitely worth checking out. You talk about some great stuff.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, well, I started doing a lot more sort of, you know, talking on my Instagram over the last, I don't know, maybe 2 years, maybe a year, whatever. And, you know, it's not weekly where I have like, okay, every week I've got to deliver something. You know, like I might go a month and I just don't feel inspired or something, you know, or I'll go a week and then boom, I'm onto it, bang, bang, you know what I mean? Because it's all organic. It's all got to be like, something's got to speak to me. It's got to speak to me. And then through my experiences of life, and as you mentioned, you know, I'll talk about stuff. So I started the YouTube channel because I was like, okay, cool. I mean, I've got hardly any followers because I'm not promoting it 24/7, but like 33 subscribers or something. It's really stupid, really. But again, I just started it. I went Carnage Philosophy because I'm like, I kind of wanted to step away. To be honest with you, I'm not trying to step away from the striking and the teaching and the skill set of what I've done, but I'm kind of really more inspired to go in the way of like talking about my life and talking to others about their life and inspiring them through that way. Because yes, my elbows are amazing and I had a good all-round kickboxing Muay Thai style of fighting, but so is everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like, let's be honest, everyone else has, got good kicks and good knees. Maybe there's people with way better kicks than me. So that's one element of training. Obviously, there's a lot of more elements to training than just that, which I have, which is, connecting it together. But I really am passionate about, the mindset, everything we're talking about today. So when I get on a social media platform, as we are now, or if I'm putting my videos up, occasionally I'll put some fight stuff because people just love it. I notice like when I put something aggressive or hurting someone, it goes crazy. If I talk about life, it's like, oh yeah, It's like if I put Carnage up, they're excited. If I put Nathan Corbett up, they're like, oh, I don't know about that.
Maybe do a little intro, a little fighting intro, and then switch to the positive message. There you go.
Yeah. So I just went, okay, well, I don't have a YouTube channel. It's always on Instagram. If you're putting stuff on Instagram, it's not going to do anything for you eventually. So you should have some kind of YouTube kind of, presence. And, if you put in my name on YouTube, there's like, hundreds and hundreds of, videos or content out there. But it's not me putting it out there. I don't even know who they are. So I thought, okay, I'll make this, and I'll just organically throw it. So at least it's out there. It's on the net for life. With YouTube, at least it's done. It's out there. People see it. They see it. If they don't, they don't. I just like to sort of, have these moments where I can share some perspectives on situations, on life, and I filter it through my experiences. That's why I always say this is just my experience, and I'm just trying to help you through my experiences, through what I've done in the past, from fighting to how I've experienced things after fighting. Through, of course, I've read some books and I've had some mentors, so it's collective information from all that. But usually organically, I won't speak about it unless it's something I've lived. I won't like just get a book and then talk about the book, right?
Right.
It has to be something that I've felt, that I've lived. So I have a heart connection and a real feeling to it. So that way when I'm speaking, it's totally organic. It's totally through my experiences. Now, I haven't much, but I might quote back to someone else what they've said, because it's very important as I'm learning that, obviously other information from other people. We all learn stuff from someone else at one point. Someone taught me how to throw a jab. It's not my jab. Someone taught me and then I developed it. Someone taught me how to throw an elbow, then I developed it. Someone taught me how to read and I developed it, and so forth. But of course, your experience in it is something unique. So when as a teacher and fighting, my experience is what brings so much more value to my audience than someone else, because I've truly experienced it in real combat. It's like when I'm teaching elbows, you have to believe me.
Right.
There is no like, oh, that might not work. It's like, no, it works. And and it works. Why? Because I've done it time after time after time, and here's the proof, and here's it. So versus just in theory, this works.
No, I think that's great. I mean, you said that you don't want to transition away from fighting or training, but you want to get more into the speech. I just don't want to discount that. Like your experiences are really, you're able to speak to that because you've been so successful and you've had so many great different experiences and different challenges that I think can resonate with different people in different times of their life, and whatever aspect they're going through, whether they're a fighter or if there's someone that is just learning martial arts or want to just apply it to just everyday life. You can get an interesting perspective, and you can deliver a message with experiences that, honestly, I mean, I read off your intro, and that's not even all of your accomplishments. I mean, that's just a smidge. If people do more research on you, they'll find a lot more things that you've accomplished. But you've been very successful at what you've done, and you're able to talk about those experiences that, frankly, not a lot of people have been able to do. So I think that's awesome. And it's great for you that you're able and willing to share those experiences.
Yeah, thank you. And that's right, because not everyone can actually, articulate things, and as an alpha male, not many alpha males are vulnerable. They don't have, the ego won't let them be vulnerable. The ego won't let them speak that they suffer. The ego won't speak that they've gone through, some kind of, pain in their life. you know, whether it's mental pain, physical pain. But usually when I talk about anything, I'm talking about mental pain, because, you know, everyone experiences physical pain. You only have to kick your toe, you know, on the bed. You know, everyone experiences physical pain. You don't have to be a Muay Thai fighter to experience physical pain. Of course, that's another level of it.
Oh, of course.
You just have to stub your toe or hit your funny bone or something, you know, and that's pain. So, but, you know, the mental, of course, that, you know, helps, is where I try to help people. And I guess, like you said, Ben, thank you on what you said before about, because I have accomplished, you know, a lot of things in my life and have experienced a lot of things in my life. So it gives my voice a little bit more of a louder, you know, echo to people. And I really, when I speak, I really do that from a place of non-ego. Like, it's not like, oh, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me, you know, where people could easily be up there like smashing something. Yeah, look how amazing I am. When I'm speaking, it's just a genuine, like, okay, this is something I feel could help. And moving forward, like, it's also practicing for, like, the vision I'd like for myself in the future, where I can do this more, you know, aggressively and more, you know, in bigger numbers and on a bigger scale, and actually maybe make a career from it and an income and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, I'm sure, you know, if you go down that path, there'll be lines of people that want to listen to it and hear and get little nuggets from you. You know, I want to give you the opportunity. We've talked about a lot of different things of your career, kind of some of the social media aspects, but is there anything else, whether it's fighting, not related to fighting, that you want to promote or talk about today?
Not really as such. Like, I don't have like a product or something I want to sell. Actually, before COVID hit, I was meant to have gone back to Australia. I was going to fly back to Australia. I had a friend there who's going to invest in filming my elbow striking system, because, you know, last few years I was doing a lot of seminars. Since I finished fighting, I did like 140 seminars.
Wow.
I traveled the world like so many times, so many different countries, you know. Great opportunity. Obviously, I moved to America 2 years ago to pursue a career in what? I don't know, like a career in teaching, a career in seminars. I got into line fights and commentating, you know, maybe a career in public speaking. Like, I just moved my whole self from Australia to a bigger pond. In America is different. It's very different to Australia. It's a very big place. To put myself in an position to give myself opportunities. So I was going to film my striking system, elbow striking system, and not so much for like a monthly, you know, prescription, but just like a one-time kind of purchase kind of thing. And then COVID hit, so that kind of froze my travel up and all the team that I had organized to do all that. I think I'll circle back around to doing that again, even if it's next year. It'd be good to, I think, document. Like I said, you know, I wanted to move away from the training, but I still love it. I think it'd be good for me to document my mind in the physical form of my mind, because like the mind I'm talking about is like speech, but then if I'm teaching, it's how my mind is perceiving in interacting with the environment, which is obviously the opponent.
Right.
So that was one of the things I was going to do. So that's unfortunate at the moment. That's just put and rested. So then obviously I had the line fight and the commentary, so that's all stopped. So I don't really have right now a particular thing I'd like to promote. I mean, I am doing some personal coaching in this time while everyone's gone into all the other business have gone into lockdown. So okay, I'll use my physicality, use my body, and use my skill sets to get through this time.
Well, we'll definitely look out for when the borders open up and you're able to get to Australia and you make those videos.
Yeah, I mean, I might end up doing it here. You know, by the time things open up, I'll probably find a film crew and find someone here. But I just had a cool team back in Australia that want to do it. My family lives back in Australia, so I thought, beautiful, go back, visit my family. You know, I've got a son back there. We see my mum, my sister, my niece, my nephews, hang out with my friends, film this awesome, you know, footage, have it all done, and then come back. So it's kind of like one, you know, do some seminars. There's one big like group, you know.
Hey, obviously, COVID happened. We weren't expecting it, but it's just a speed bump. It's not a roadblock. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. You just got to keep pivoting, and
yeah.
Gives, you know, like I spoke on my recent thing, you know, talking about, you know, your why and finding your real why. You know, like these are the times that kind of challenge you to find what your real why is, because, you know, you maybe what you thought was your why isn't kind of working, you know what I mean? And especially like for me, like it was really challenging to ask myself, okay, well, this is not really working, so what's working? And that's why I speak about these things as well, to try and help people through periods of their life that I'm going through. Like usually when I speak about something, it's something that I've experienced and gone through, or am experiencing and going through. So like I said, it's usually pretty organic and raw.